the most consistent thing about ADHD is the inconsistency. All of that made sense. And it was a huge light bulb moment for me. And so much shame like fell off. And at the same time, I'm still dealing with those thoughts.
Yeah.
Still comes and creeps in when I miss a bill or avoid opening my mail for 3 months or anything else.
Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of 2 on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. Today we are diving into living as a mom with ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD about a year and a half ago, and it has been quite the journey, pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis, just kind of learning what that means for me. I did not realize how much ADHD impacted me really until becoming a mom. It really kind of blew up in my face of like, oh, I have a different kind of brain than what is considered typical. And this is a conversation I've been wanting to bring to Worthy Mother Podcast for quite some time because it's something I'm so interested in talking about just as somebody who is on this journey myself, but it's also something that I know so many moms are navigating. And I think it's important that we talk about neurodivergence and motherhood and what that can do to our experiences, right? So joining us for this conversation is Samantha Skvaril. She is a Chicago-based clinical therapist, private practice owner, and a late diagnosed ADHD mom who blends clinical insight and unfiltered honesty. And we are going to get into the experience of ADHD and motherhood, what that means for the mental load, what diagnosis can look like, understanding our own experiences through a neurodivergent lens, and all of this from somebody who works as a mental health professional, but also lives life as a mother with ADHD. So Samantha, welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I am so excited to have you here. Let's kind of just get started with who you are, your story, and what led to that late ADHD diagnosis, and maybe even how that shifted how you saw yourself as a mom and a therapist.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And so I'm honored to be here. I'm really excited. And yeah, so that story is funny because it's funny for like so many reasons. I never would have guessed that I had ADHD. As a therapist, I even had told colleagues, don't ever refer me to someone with ADHD. To be fair, I also pictured an ADHDer as that like 4th grade boy pulling the girl's hair in front of like no depiction of like what the other parts of ADHD as I think is so what's happening now. So yeah, I was like, don't ever refer me to anyone with ADHD or autism. I know nothing about it. It sounds too hard. And like, it's hilarious. And it was like quickly after that I went and I saw a new provider and I was like, hey, I have bipolar 2. I know it. Just tell me I do. And then let's talk about it. And she's like, you don't. What about ADHD? Have you considered ADHD? And I was like, never actually, but no. And I don't know. She said a few things. And I just remember looking at my like huge laundry pile, like in the corner where it still is. And I was like, you know what? This could make sense. And in that moment, I was like, I have ADHD. And she's like, do you want to wait and sit on it before we start like it, meds? I was like, no, I do have ADHD. So obviously that was like the onset of my realization. And at that point, I was probably like 1.5 years postpartum with my son. And so I had experienced motherhood for 1.5 years unmedicated, and my whole life was unmedicated for ADHD. And ever since that light bulb moment, I continue to have light bulb moments. I don't know if that's the case for you, but I do hear a lot of people say that. It's like the light bulb moments never stop. You think they're done, but they're not. And then when they come at the right time. They just seem to come at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate so deeply to that. There's a part of me, like you say the laundry pile, and that for me is like one of the biggest things. And I know that that is something like laundry's never ending for everyone, right? But it's like the inability to deal with it. And that's always something that has been true for me. But I think with becoming a mom, it was now there's like all these things that I am responsible for, and I literally can't do any of it. Like I I'm stuck. I can't.
Yes.
And it's just how motherhood like shined the light on it in
Yes.
a way that I could kind of hide from myself even prior.
Not only do you have more laundry, I imagine, so like the
Yeah.
systems that we had before are changed because we have more of it. So we were just getting by before, or like buying new underwear every time you ran out because you could. Now it's like that doesn't make sense because I have other people in my house who need underwear. So like those systems, they were systems and they don't work anymore. So yeah, yes.
So I'm curious because you are somebody who sees clients and, I mean, people with ADHD often end up in therapy, whether that's specifically for ADHD or like the plethora of mental health things that can come along with having ADHD. How has your own journey with neurodivergence and getting that diagnosis later in life, how does that shape the way that you show up for your clients?
Yeah. Yes. So once I had my diagnosis, I realized that I was unknowingly already working with like 75% population who was neurodivergent in some way. So that was funny. Little did I know, right? Because I wasn't going to work with ADHDers. I already was. And so now that's just continued because as I've just, that's my niche. And so I knowingly, these people are coming in knowing this is what they're going to come for. And my caseload is primarily late diagnosed ADHD or people who got diagnosed earlier on and haven't really paid attention to it until now as they're adults, parents, primarily moms. With that being said, same kind of demographic coming in, and people are all in their own journey and then at a different place in that journey. And I also see so much overlap. It's like, so a primary thing that I will see, and I do see that everybody with ADHD who comes in my door has in some capacity is shame. Shame from going their whole life undiagnosed and nobody, knowing and knowing that there should be a different way in which we're doing everything, and like living in the society that isn't made for neurodivergent people. So shame not being able to like live up to whatever expectations they had for themselves, their parents, their school, culturally. And that shame is, like I said, something I see all the time. And people will be at different places in their journey with their shame and deconstructing that. And I will notice it's pretty apparent from the get go where that person will be, whether they know it or not. But that is something that I also personally am always going to be dealing with. And I will notice, okay, like I was here too at this point, or oh, like I'm dealing with that now, in my head. And so that is an interesting dynamic because it's just so common, especially in, AFAB people, women. So I really liked this question being, like as the person who we are literally taught in school, like you are the expert in the room. And there is, as much as is also part of therapy language, like that person is the expert of their own life. And that's something I fully 100% believe. I don't ever view myself as the expert in the therapy room ever. But there's that inherent power dynamic. Just like when you go to the doctor, just like, every other place where that is there. And so, with that being said, we are held to a certain expectation. And part of that inherent learned expectation to be the expert in the room is what trips me up personally as a therapist because there is so much of that built into being a late diagnosed ADHD already. Like, okay, I shouldn't be at the same place as my client. Like, who am I? And then you go down that spiral of what is it called? Imposter syndrome. I always forget that term. That imposter syndrome that's like, I think that a lot of people struggle with, don't have to be neurodivergent. But I think people who are neurodivergent struggle with it a lot more and a lot more intensely. So that comes up. And then I'm like, okay, well, this, why am I here? They should be with somebody who is like cured or at a better place. There's no cure, obviously, but like at a further along destination. This client who's struggling with this, if they only knew what I was struggling with, like if they looked at the rest of my room, oh my God, we could go down that shame spiral that is intensified because of the ADHD. And so that has been something that I will probably struggle with in some way. I don't like to say it forever, but it's gotten better. And so I feel
Yeah,
like that is an interesting dynamic.
totally. Well, and you're saying that, and I'm like, but there is also so much inherent value in somebody seeing a therapist. I know with a therapy relationship, it's not like you're necessarily sharing your experiences, but just coming to those conversations with your experiences, with the understanding of how that shame is like in some ways baked into the experience of having neurodivergence,
Yes.
of having a brain that works differently than what our society says it should be, and the outcomes of that. And I actually want to get into that specifically around motherhood.
Yeah.
When we think about, I talk so much on this podcast about the societal expectations on moms and how there's not one mom out there who can live up to all of the expectations, right? Like the expectations are something I often point out is like you're expected to be with your kids 100% of the time, but you're also expected to contribute financially to the home. We just look at that one tiny thing and it's like, yeah, no one can do all of that. Like that's impossible. Their time doesn't work that way.
No.
When you have ADHD or, some other diagnosis or just way of being that impacts your ability to manage the mental load, manage the labor that comes with motherhood, that is already the expectation for everybody is too high. It's too unrealistic. And then we're coming to the table with that being like a weak point, a weak spot, right? Like for me, dealing with certain things feels impossible. And there is so much shame around that. I just am curious your thoughts on how we can come to motherhood navigating all of that, navigating not being able to live up to these expectations.
Yeah. And I think it's also dependent upon if you're diagnosed and not, and
Yeah.
if you've worked on it or not. I think like that matters because there is this, like we call light bulb moment when your whole life makes sense a little bit, that happens for not everybody, but when we're like, okay, this isn't a personality thing, this isn't a morality thing, this is my brain. And you can have that realization, and then because ADHD is inconsistent, be questioning it and think you're making an excuse about it. And that goes back and forth all the time. But like there are those inherent light bulb moments where everything will make sense and you'll kind of step back and allow yourself to breathe for a second. I feel like that having happened makes a difference for people. So that's why I say like it depends on where you are in your journey. Because I think you can go back to that when you're feeling up against the wall because of your ADHD and there's a million things going on and you have to make lunches and you forgot and like you're running late and your house is a mess and like all of those things building up, which lead to your shame monster being like you're blah 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 blah, you're gonna ruin your kid's life, you're a terrible mom, you're blah 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 inconsistent. Like if you can step back from that from a second, I think that's helpful. So that's one part.
You saying that, it really is like the default that so many of us go to of like, I'm a bad mom because I'm not able to do XYZ to this standard or whatever, right? Like that's every mom experiences that at some point. Like
Yeah.
that's a very common thing. And I think what you're saying of like when you're able to understand why something may be hard for you, it changes the conversation. It changes like how you're able to address that when you are working with a therapist or a coach or doing research on how to manage different aspects of life as somebody with ADHD. You're solving a different problem. You're not solving the problem of I'm a bad mom. Like there's that moral component to that. Like that's not the problem that's being solved. It's like I'm forgetting to pack my kids' lunch every day or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
It's the system around that. It's like having a tool to support a different problem than a morality one. And I
Yes.
think that is just so important to understand
Yeah.
because, especially with the fact that like getting diagnoses can be not always the easiest thing.
No.
It's
Yeah.
a lot that goes into that. Maybe we can dive into that a little bit with moms who may feel like they are neurodivergent. I mean, I think there's a lot of women who, like, it just never came up. We masked it, and like we weren't jumping out of our seats in fourth grade, like you said, like the boys with ADHD were. Like, it's a lot of us have gone through life where you tell people you have ADHD and they're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
But there are like signs. So what would you say to somebody who maybe is questioning like if they are neurodivergent and if they should seek a diagnosis, if they should seek support?
It's like that, you tell someone, okay, so let's use the experience of being a woman. You tell someone, even your parents, I got diagnosed with ADHD, or I think I might have ADHD. And there's like a couple things that probably are the typical response. Like, you did so good in school. Like, you were an overachiever. What are you talking about? You got straight A's. I mean, I've done it, so that wouldn't be my experience, but that's an experience. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's when you're so accomplished. Like, what are you talking about? You have ADHD. Don't be ridiculous. Because this is what we understand about ADHD. And so we got to be careful who we go to. Number one, maybe don't go to your parents, but just, that's a generalization. I didn't go to my parents. So that's a huge generalization. So yeah, first thing would be like, let's just know right off the bat that that isn't the criteria. So, like, yes, when we're seeking and going through diagnosis, we're going to ask questions about your childhood. We're going to ask questions about how you did in school. And I think there could be fear for people like, okay, well, I did good in school, but like, I think I have ADHD. Should I not say? Should I say I did bad? No, because that's no, 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 no. It's a common thing to feel like you're going to be misunderstood when seeking diagnosis because you're so used to being misunderstood. If you think you're neurodivergent, you're used to being misunderstood. That's why you're questioning seeking diagnosis to begin with, because you probably somewhat expect that. And yeah, it's not the easiest to find, unfortunately, a provider who is up to date on neurodivergence and how it presents in adulthood and how it might present in motherhood and how it presents late diagnosed. Unfortunately, we're still in that place. So that's a barrier too. There's so many barriers, financial barriers, insurance barrier, like so much. But that own internal barrier of I'm going to be misunderstood. What's the point is a big one too. And so there are a lot of online resources where like I really love, it's called Embracing Autism. I don't know if you've seen the website before, but
Mm-hmm.
so it's like autism assessments that you can do virtually on your own. And then you can like get a diagnosis through them too virtually. And then I think also for ADHD. So I know that there are also ADHD assessments on there that are the clinical assessments that you're going to see that I would use. Also, you do not have another tidbit is like you don't have to go and get a full-on neuropsychological evaluation. That's a lot of money. You don't have to do that to get an ADHD diagnosis. There is like this, I think, is becoming more well known. I don't actually know because I know therapists still have the same question. That full neuropsych is like 6 hours long. You only need that if you need some kind of accommodations for work or school. You
Okay.
don't need that. You can go and be diagnosed. You can be diagnosed. Technically, I don't know if this is the case. It probably varies state to state. I mean, I've diagnosed ADHD in my clients. And if they want medication, they go to a referral that I send them to get that diagnosis from them and the medication too. So that's a way to be diagnosed, seeking out a neurodivergent affirming provider. I have like a resource I made that's like 11 questions to ask a future therapist or honestly anyone, any provider you're going to probably could be manipulated for it because this is such a thing that we're still dealing with is like this
Mm-hmm.
misinformation. So yes.
No, I think that's super helpful. Just an understanding. There were a lot of things you said in there that for me, I'm like, yeah, that was true on my journey. And I actually, when you said be careful who you do go to, I think that is such a key point. I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience. I was that kid who got straight A's. I did really well in school. I did a lot of like just performing for other people. Like, and I
Mhm.
got a lot of good feedback on it. And like, yeah, if you were to tell my third grade teacher that I had ADHD, like, no, no way. So like the thought of like like saying these things out loud. My sister, my younger sister, was diagnosed with ADHD, and she has. It was like a little bit more like it presented a
Typical.
little bit more typically, you know. Still, she's a woman, like it's different than like that stereotype that we see. But I remember talking to my mom about the fact that I thought I had ADHD, and she actually came across an article that she was reading that was, probably on like Today or something. And it ended up talking about women being diagnosed with ADHD and the things they struggle with. And she sent it to me and was like, you match most of these things. And just how like affirming that was for my mom to acknowledge that, like, oh yeah, these are some criteria, and like these are all things you struggle with. And
Yeah.
but acknowledging also that like that's the perception that most of us, and really anyone older than us, is going to carry into what they know about ADHD is probably not in line with what actually a diagnosis looks like. So I think
Yeah.
that's really important to keep in mind. I would love to get into, I know something that you've spoken about is how your diagnosis helped you make sense of your childhood. And I just am interested what it has been like to reprocess your earlier experiences with a new understanding of your neurodivergence.
Yeah. Yes. I had a thought when you were talking about how your ADHD presented as like, the doing the things for the approval or praise from others to be seen by others. And that's why a lot of ADHD and women will be misdiagnosed, is because I don't know if you struggled with anxiety growing up, but I think it like we're
Yeah.
our ADHD is like fueled from anxiety. And so once the anxiety is treated, and which sometimes I don't know if you're on
Yeah.
medication, but like
Yep.
the medication will lessen your anxiety. It like you will start unmasking sometimes and being like, okay, so like that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, like I think anxiety probably would be like more of how you presented growing up. And so that would make sense as to why, like another reason why you were missed, I imagine.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, yep.
Yeah.
Everything you just said.
Yeah. Okay. So for my childhood, there's like two things that come to mind. And I don't know if this is like the biology of becoming a mom, right? Like what they say, how like your brain changes to be like basically because you have to take care of someone else. And so I don't know if part of that brain change, and like we could probably look into this more, and I think I have at some point, but like clearly not fully. Anyways, I feel like the part of that brain change is that also like re-examining your entire childhood and being triggered by, because I think it must be like, I feel like, although I don't know if this happens for like all of our parents, but for me that was something that happened pretty right away. Like I don't even know if I had my ADHD diagnosis at the time, and I would be like, how did this happen in childhood? Like I could never part of that whole process. So that's there. And that's aside from my ADHD diagnosis, but it plays into it. And so, like, growing up, I did really well naturally in school until sixth grade. And I remember in sixth grade, we're in middle school, it just wasn't easy to me anymore. And school had always been easy for me. I skated by because, like, this is a common story. Skated by until I couldn't, and then once I couldn't, like all walls went up, and I struggled because like I wasn't used to trying. Therefore, when I had to try, I was like paralyzed because I wouldn't. It was like, I mean, to the last day of college, I would be not studying for a test. Obviously, if I studied, it would be the night before. Always had trouble with late assignments. And all of those experiences, it took me 6 years to graduate in my undergrad. So school was hard for me for forever, and I was always punished for it. Like, I don't know if you had it where you could like your parents could see your missing assignments growing up. That was like my version of hell. Because my mom was always on there, just like waiting for me to miss assignment. I think it was like I got home and I could expect that I was going to be asked about a test or an assignment, and the punitive aspect of that has shaped my life. And I have struggles in so many areas with that still because I'm not in school anymore. And so shame added up there. So, like, that was hard. And so, having this new lens on school, and just one example, and all of the stuff I'd built up in my own head over the years about I was lazy and unmotivated and a piece of shit, like all of that light bulb moment was like, okay, this makes sense. This makes
Yeah.
sense. That was huge. And that is still huge. And it's at the same time, I don't know who said this, but just like Dr. Russell Barkley or some other well-known ADHD researcher said, which totally makes sense, that the most consistent thing about ADHD is the inconsistency.
Mhm.
And meaning like in this reference, it's like, yeah, all of that made sense. And it was a huge light bulb moment for me. And so much shame like fell off. And at the same time, I'm still dealing with those thoughts.
Yeah.
Still comes and creeps in when I miss a bill or avoid opening my mail for 3 months or anything else. I forget to pack lunch. And now having that mindset, my kids aren't in school yet, but with my toddler and in the future with my kids. And then it's like, then I could go into an old spiral about how that expectation now to be perfect and the layer with ADHD, I could like go on. So that has been really interesting for me in my own process of like examining my childhood and just that example.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of the shame that seems so attached to like the morality, the laziness, the like, well, you must not care about paying the bill on time. You must not care
Yes.
about these things. And it's like, oh
I
no,
wish you
believe
cared more.
me,
Yes.
it's in the back of my mind 100% of the time, causing deep, 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 deep anxiety. This
Yes.
literally
Oh,
has nothing to do with care. It has nothing to do with being lazy because the amount of energy I'm expending on it. But just, I mean, like you said there, that when you could recognize that and realize that, some of the shame fell away. And I'm going to come back to, because this conversation, it's so interesting how talking about the expectations on everybody, and then when you have ADHD, it's very similar to just talking about the expectations on moms and then just
mm-hmm.
existing as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
When we have these conversations, when we can recognize what the expectation is and how unfair that expectation is, how unrealistic it is, the shame can start to fall away. There's a lot more self-compassion. However, that shame was being like caked on for a long time. It doesn't go away. It's so ingrained in who we are because we've spent X amount of years telling ourselves or being explicitly told that we're not enough, that there's something wrong with us. And that has a very real impact. That has a very real, like, generational impact.
Mm-hmm.
But we are having the conversations now. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
just in the last 5 years, the last 3 years, the last year, the
Yes.
conversations out there about women with ADHD, like, we are having the conversations. There's access to this information in a way that I don't even know if the information existed before. Like,
Right. Like what? Yeah.
but there's people like you showing up on social media and sharing these things and sharing the reality and sharing it from both a personal experience and as well as somebody who like knows what they're talking about in terms of the brain and mental health. And that does make a difference for us as individuals, but it also makes a difference generationally. It makes a difference
Yes.
in how we can approach our kids. I know I was an elementary school teacher for a few years, and yeah, you right there.
I got my bachelor's in elementary ed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it really is the way that I approached the classroom versus people who'd been teaching for years was very different. Like it has a generational impact when we acknowledge the fact that like all our brains work different and can have more compassion for ourselves and for those around us. Like that's huge. Hopefully the kids in our lives, I'm sure there will be plenty of things they have shame about because we're not
Yes.
doing it perfectly, but hopefully overall like we have more compassion for them and understanding that like whether you are, neurodivergent or like have a neurodivergency diagnosis, like what are we considering normal? What are we considering typical? What are the expectations and why are those expectations? And is that realistic for anyone? Like, does it make sense that that's the value we're placing on somebody is being able to turn in all your assignments on time when we know that like you get out into the real world that really has very little to do with how successful you're going to be, how much money you're going to make, how happy you're going to be in a marriage, like whatever, right? Like but it's still the expectations and standards that are set for us. So I don't
Yes.
know.
No, it makes so much sense if you overlap it with like in the way that you described it at the beginning, like the overlap, the ADHD like diagnosis overlap with yeah, and motherhood in the sense of we are working actively. Most of us are working against the cultural standards that were set on mothers. We're constantly working against that rhetoric, that like all of that.
Yeah.
And we could talk about it with people, and we could be doing that work on our own and reading about it and involved. And like at the same time, because it's everywhere and we were raised in, that's how we were raised, it's the cultural norm, it's the expectation still
Mhm.
that we should have all our shit together. And you know, like, okay, you're a stay-at-home mom, but like also you need to work 40 hours a week and be making money. And then if you're not doing enough, but God forbid you miss a soccer tournament, like, what, she's a terrible mom. Like, we're working against that at the same time because everyone else is like, it's still in the culture, it's still
Yeah.
here. And so we could hide from it, but it's still there. Just like the shame with ADHD is like,
Yeah.
we're working against it, we're working against it. And in our foundational years, our developmentally 0 to 7 is like the most important years in our development, brain wise, too,
Yeah.
brain wise. And so, like, what happens during that time is extremely important in how we present ourselves and shapes us. And so that's why it's not, you know, we could have that light bulb moment and it's not going to change anything the next day. We're still going to have all those beliefs about ourselves,
Yeah.
right? It's so, the overlap is very similar.
Yeah. I totally. And it really is. I mean, you said like we have to have our shit all together. And I'm like, yeah, there's more shit to have together than there were
Mm-hmm,
for the generations past. I mean,
mm-hmm.
like, it's the amount of things that we are expected to hold as humans, as adults, as moms in particular is absurd. Like, it's absurd the amount that we're expected to handle and deal with. I think regularly about the fact that I'm like, I feel like I'm a pretty competent human. I have supportive people in my life. I
Mm-hmm.
have a mom that I can call and be like, what do I do with this situation? Like, I have people that have always helped me with these things. And I'm like, there are things where I'm like, I can't figure out how to do this. And like, there's no way that like all the other adults out here know how to do this. Like,
Yeah.
is everyone just like floundering in adulthood like I am? And I think that like probably to an extent, yes. Like, unless you have enough money to pay someone to do certain things for you that like you don't have to deal with, it's like there's just the expectations are wild.
Yeah. And I'm sure your ADHD also makes things feel harder. And then
Yes,
we
for sure.
feel more isolated and like,
Yeah.
is everyone struggling with this? I can't, like, you know, yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. Are there any like misconceptions or like struggles that you see in your therapy work with moms with ADHD that come up consistently outside of what we've kind of been talking about?
Yeah. So ADHD is not,
Mm-hmm.
this is another Russell Barkley quote. ADHD is not a, I think it is, and not a disorder of not knowing what to do. It's a disorder of doing what we know, not being able, struggling to do what we know. That fucking quote changed my life because that was also another light bulb by shame for a second, right? Like, oh my God. So that in motherhood, if you just think about that, like as a mom, how often you feel like, I mean, we were just talking about it, like, I don't know how to do this. Am I alone in this? Or this is hard. Like, your ADHD compounding on that in motherhood, and like put in that idea, that quote, that like motherhood often is, we don't know a lot of things, how to do a lot of things. And there is no right way for so many things.
I mean, I'm just thinking about like how there's conversations about like intuition and
Oh
like
yeah,
being
yeah.
able to like just know how to do it, which I know there's lots of conversations
So
about like
right.
does that exist? But like
Yes.
it's like if we have this intuition, it sure as hell doesn't account for the context that we're living in. Like
Doesn't apply everywhere, right?
computers,
Like,
like I don't it's this our innate ability to be a mom has nothing to do with the world that we live in right now. Like maybe
no.
some of it, maybe we know best in some ways. I don't know. You could make that argument, but like,
But oh my God, overlapping that with ADHD, where
yeah,
neurotypical people are not getting hooked. Normal people aren't getting hooked on thoughts in the way that neurodivergent people do.
yeah,
Okay. So that is to say that, like, bring in this, the whole idea of mom intuition. It's just, it's in my intuition. Okay. You tell an ADHDer that for the most part, like, okay, you know, like You'll know. You'll know. You'll just know what to do. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you one person in my caseload who's ever known because that just trips us up way more. Like, is it your anxiety? Well, here's how you know if it's anxiety. Here's how you know if it's intuition. I don't know. Like, we have interoception issues. I don't even know when I have to pee half the time. Don't tell me I'm supposed to know this. Like, where am I supposed to feel this? No. So, like, yeah, that can be really harmful to someone who doesn't even know, like, yeah, oh God, so many things. Doesn't even
I mean,
know.
somebody who forgets to eat because they're like not even thinking about if they're hungry because they're distracted by something else. It's like,
Yes,
so now you're
doesn't
telling
have
me something that I
groceries.
can't
Yes,
feel and I'm just supposed to
yes.
know. And then
There's
when I
no
don't, there's the
tangible.
shame. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that is something that I do see in a lot of my moms who have ADHD is like more stress over doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because they don't know all of the options. It's not because they haven't read up fully on this one parenting struggle, because they usually have. Because they usually have a lot
I've gone down all the
more.
rabbit holes.
Yes, they know. Like, they know all the answers. They could probably give it to a friend. But when it comes to us, and yeah, we're, because of all of that knowledge, we're like, oh my God,
Yeah,
frozen.
yeah,
And so it's
yeah,
like really dismantling that shame. And you know what to do. You know what to do. You know the answer. It's not about that.
yeah.
There's something else
It's not
happening.
about
It's
that.
usually, yeah, a lot of other stuff happening there.
So, as we wrap up talking about all of this, I'm just curious what you can leave us with in terms of like realistic support for moms with ADHD and maybe like how you get through, right? Like when you're in the midst of like complete executive dysfunction or the overwhelm, sensory overload, how you get through that.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, medication helps a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a lot with a
Yeah.
lot of things, and, ADHD related. And so, aside from that, really, this is like another part where it comes in, like, that I am the expert and still have sensory overload every day with so sound, whining, and oh my gosh, all that. So, just like normalizing that you might be struggling more than your neighbor who seems to just never struggle with any of that stuff if you're neurodivergent. And so knowing a couple of things that like do help you regulate, like knowing that for yourself. And they're not always like the things we think about, like swinging on the swing. If your kids have like a playground set, like going and swinging on the swing, because that sensory movement can be regulating,
Yeah.
right? Like, I have like putty, and so I like, I guess it's my son's sensory regulation thing too, because he steals it from me all the time. It makes a mess. But like, this is my thing too. I love squeezing putty. I have like one of those neck massagers. That sensory input. Again, I can't think of what it's called. Like,
Like, is it
the pressure.
proprioceptive?
I think it is. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so bad with those terms, but I really want to know them better. Is regulating. So no,
Yeah.
having a few things that regulate you. Going on a walk can be the thing that you go to, when you can.
I think it was important what you said there about like it's normalizing that you might struggle more. And I think like that piece of it, it's like you also want the tools. You want the tools to help you, but
Yeah.
knowing that like we can expect perfection with that. Like we have to meet ourselves where we're at, and we have to have that compassion for ourselves when we are losing
Yeah.
our shit because we're so overwhelmed. Like,
Yes. It's like, number one tool would be like, isn't a tangible one. It's just that like compassion piece. And if you
mhm.
don't have the compassion for yourself, because you probably don't, if you're just like starting off on this journey, pretend you do, like fake it. Some mantras can be helpful in like repeating those things. Like, the whole, there's also one about laziness that I really like. And I think like a lot of ADHDers might have this like internalized feeling that they're just lazy. I do.
Mhm.
Because yeah, of all my struggles with school and not doing homework, like, you're just lazy. Okay, so that's like inherently in my brain now. A quote that I learned is, there's no such thing as laziness, only barriers to motivation. That was like, oh my God, that was so helpful. So, like, something like that can actually be helpful. Even if you still think you're lazy tomorrow, like, remember, inconsistency, it's not going to be consistent. We might wake up one day and the system isn't working anymore. Hence, like, when we became moms, the system we had didn't work anymore. And that's to be expected. And transitions are really hard for neurodivergent people. So, like, It's not easy. It's really fucking hard. Remember, it's hard. And like, remember that your brain chemistry is actively working against this to make it harder. That
Yeah.
is a factor, whether your mom wants to admit it to you, whether your doctor knows about it or not. That's a factor. And so find people who can validate that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great note to kind of end that on is like find people who can validate that for you. Like, that's why therapy can be so huge. That's
Yeah.
why working with practitioners that are supportive of that, if you have conversations with friends, if you tune into something like this, like,
Yes.
it's just normalizing that and getting it through your brain that, like,
Mm-hmm.
you may have ingrained beliefs about yourself, but this is actually what's happening. And
Yes.
you can start to shift that. And it's not all going to shift at once, it's not going to consistently shift, but like, you can start to break down some of that shameful messaging, which is
Yes.
huge.
Like the shame work is a huge part of working on your ADHD and finding a
Yeah,
therapist who understands that and isn't going to throw you tools that aren't really going to do anything until we work on that inherent shame piece.
totally. So, my favorite thing to ask at the end of these conversations with the wonderful moms I have on Worthy Mother podcast is about self care. There's a lot of conversation out there about taking care of ourselves as moms, but I think when it comes down to it, like, we have needs that need to be met. And so we need to be making sure we're doing what we can to make sure our needs are getting met. So I would just love to know how you take care of yourself in your daily life and if you have any advice for moms to make sure they are regularly.
Such a loaded question that's like not supposed to be loaded, right? I take care of myself personally now that I've realized this is self care by taking my medication, by showering sometimes as a mom, right? Like that isn't a given anymore, I guess, for me, at least for most people I know. Yeah, like those small things. So the medication aspect, the showering aspect, like getting a second of alone time. Also, my self care is work. And that's another thing that I could be like stigmatized for as a mom. Yeah, working, like still being, making sure that I have that because sometimes I view that as self care, that a time away as an adult. Self care is my kids being in daycare and being proud of that in a place that I trust and love. Like those can add to our self care bucket. And like just for parents realizing, like sometimes, yeah, self care is a loaded question that's not supposed to be loaded, but it isn't. Everyone says this now. It's not like bubble baths and whatever, but it can be. But like, yeah, sometimes it is just like bringing your kids to daycare, even if you're not working that day.
I completely agree. It's just finding the ways to, yeah, make sure you're getting what you need. And
Yeah.
that, for a lot of us, that's a break from our kids sometimes. That's
Yes.
doing the work that matters to us. That's taking your medication, which might be hard to do because you don't remember in the morning, which is this is my reminder that after we hang up, I need to go take my meds.
Good.
It's
Yeah.
all those things. It matters.
Yes.
Samantha, thank you so much for being here and sharing just from so many different angles about the experience of mothering with ADHD and navigating the world as a woman who is late diagnosed. Where can listeners find you? I know, like, I love your content on Threads, but tell us all the places.
Yeah. I'm at Scatterbrain Shrink Threads everywhere, TikTok and Instagram. So it's easy to remember. And yeah, primarily I've been posting on Threads because I've just found it's easiest for me. I get really overwhelmed everywhere else. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And then through there, you can go to my link. If you live in Illinois and are looking for a therapist, I'm full. So it can't be me, but I would be definitely give you a really great referral if you reached out to me via my website. So that's all linked on, I think, all of my social media platforms as well.
Amazing. And I'll make sure it's all linked in the show notes too, because I know these resources, you may just be somebody who needs that referral. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. So definitely give Samantha a follow if you feel like if you are diagnosed with ADHD or neurodivergence or not, but you're interested in learning more, definitely somebody you want to be following.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have like 2 free resources on unmasking. And like I said, I have that like question to ask your therapist if they're neurodivergent, if they know anything about ADHD or not. Definitely pick those up because they're free and I think they're really helpful. And I'm hoping to start some coaching sometime soon. So that could be something to look out for too if you
Okay.
don't live in Illinois. And then if you're looking for coaching specifically
Yeah.
for ADHD.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here again. Thank you for just like so vulnerably sharing with us. I think these really honest conversations are huge, especially when we're talking about something that can be so like riddled with shame. So just really
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun. I love this kind of conversation. So I'd be happy to come back at any point. Yeah.
Amazing. And thank you for tuning in. You are worthy, Mama.